So let's see. I see Sloth showed up. That's good. Getting ourselves together here. Good morning, Sloth.
It's a morning. That's fine.
It's a morning.
Isn't it always morning?
It's morning somewhere. Because
It's
the
kind
Earth
of
is a
like
globe.
yeah. It's like it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's an appropriate time to be starting my workday somewhere. There you go.
Eh,
Yeah, I think we'll see if somebody else if any other animals show up. But yeah, how was your
Yeah.
guys' weekend? Was anything fun going on? You looking at any cool ones?
Man, I'm interested to hear your boomer coin story for sure.
Oh
Because I
yeah.
missed out on that. I was doing driving and dog and all that, taking dog to the vet and et cetera, all that like normal people stuff. I missed out on the good stuff.
Oh man, I saw Easy just posted a thing. He's on his way to a root canal.
Ugh.
Well, good luck, Easy. He already left, but yeah.
Yeah, truly though.
that
But
sounds
it,
about as fun as and exciting as a root canal.
yeah. Yeah, we were talking uh yeah, because last week we were talking about some specific stuff. Like, man, the market is crazy. But just like everything it was going sideways and it starts going down a little bit, but it's like 1 or 2%. Everybody starts screaming, "Oh my god, the world's ending!" But the one token that apparently, for some reason, I don't know why, but carried my portfolio this week was Boomer Coin, which is
How wild.
hilarious. Yeah, I was like, I'm going around looking because last week I was, while we were talking and we were going back and forth, I was I just started looking at lists on Dex Screener, just looking at latest ones, and I was looking for ones that just had goofy names. Like there was Meme Verse, there was this like Bowden coin that got dumped to base. Basically, just copying Saul's stuff to base. But then Boomer
Mhm.
Coin, I saw it and I was like, that's pretty funny. So I bought like $300 worth, and then all of a sudden, like 3 days later, it was up to like $1,500. I was like, well, everything else I had, was down a couple hundred, but that one was up and saved all my losses.
Yeah, well, I thought Dragonate's point earlier today, I forget what his animal assignment is, but whatever that is, imagine I used it correctly. With like that contract warning was really interesting about Boomer Coin, like the dichotomy of you being like, "Yo, this worked out super great for me," and then Dragonate being like, "Yo, watch out." It was really interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I've said it before in here, but it's like there was some coin that I was a part of where like the mint function wasn't turned off. The liquidity pool wasn't locked.
Hmm.
90% of the coins were in the top 10 holder wallets. But the coin popped off. And part of it is honestly like from a purely like liquidity, like market, tracker perspective, is because when 90% of the supply is essentially locked up but theoretically in circulation, it makes the number go up real fast.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those things where it's like sometimes the ability to get rugged is also the ability to rocket to the moon.
It's really
It's a,
interesting.
it's a very double-edged sword.
It's so, you know, we're trying not to be smart and stuff here, but I mean, this
Some
is
of
the
us don't
reason,
have to try.
right? Well, that's, the reason the SEC was created was to protect people against this stuff. I get that. Now, whether or not you think they've overstepped their bounds or not now is a different question. But the reason it was created, right, is because this stuff is extremely common and was one of the things that led to like the 1930s, right? Like total market crash is things. There's too many weird things and with weird dynamics behind it, and you didn't know what was happening.
I just think it's very important for people to know what they're getting into and know what is going on with the thing that they're aping into and shit. And be able to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a great point. Like I've got I don't know if I've told the story before, but it's like I've got a guy in one of my alpha chats who, like, every time he comes in and shills something, it's like, this is the next Mog, like, a part into this, and then it goes to garbage, and 2 days later, this one's the next Mog, and it's like, dude, like, you're the guy who cried Mog, like, not everything can be the next Mog. And one of the other guys in the chat was like, hey, I found this play, here's where it's at, I think it's pretty cool, I think the guy is really dedicated to it, I think it's going to be like a slow grower, but I think it's got some decent potential. I'd think about exiting at about 10 to 15 million. And so, like, one of the our big, like, influencer that's in the chat kind of tagged it and said, this is how you shill a coin, like, it's, hey, here's the full info, here's what I expect. It's not just like everything's perfect and amazing all the time. It's like, yeah, I think it's cool, here's why, here's where I think it's going to perform, and then we kind of cross our fingers.
Wow,
um
you just coined a really good. We need to start making key phrases for ourselves. And yeah, you want your meme coins to be growers, not showers. Right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And like, one of my bigger, I don't know if you want to call it a win, since I'm still down horrendous. Um, but one of the biggest recoveries that I saw was on Bohm, and it was one of those things where the guy who shilled it to me was like, shilled it to me at like 17 million, and it got to like over 100, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Um, but he just, like, he kept being like, oh, it's he just kind of kept yelling higher, but he did that for all of his coins, and so I didn't know when to, like, believe that this one was actually going to hit a billion. And I'm like, oh man, if only this guy, like, shilled with nuance.
Well,
I,
that's
I feel like I would have done better, but instead he's just always yelling that everything's great. And this was even a different guy than the first guy I was talking about, and it's like, if you come at everything full bore, no one knows what to think sometimes.
yeah. Well, that's. I mean, it also tells you that he probably doesn't actually understand what he's doing. He just got lucky on one. Like if
Yeah.
he's saying that about everything.
Yeah. He's like, well, I believed in this because of this. Okay, well, did you say that at the time, or did you just yell higher 30 times in the chat?
I'm kind of liking this like critique and discussion on like this critique of and this discussion of strategies for people that are in the telegrams shilling these coins. I feel like that's something that's like not often discussed in spaces like this, right? Where people are talking, we're talking about coins, we're talking about like our understanding of contracts and legal stuff. And one thing that I think is often not addressed is, who's bringing these sources of information and what kind of critiques we have of their performance, right? So, Harry, exactly like you're saying, right? Like, you don't want to be the person that cries Mog all the time. You want to like come in and have practical, thoughts on like, this is why I like something. This is an exit point I'm thinking about taking, and that's how you're bringing value to an ecosystem and to a for example a Telegram chat. Because if it's just a bunch of people saying higher all the time, I can get that on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't. I can get that
Um,
literally anywhere. I can yell it in my room right now, and it would be
Yeah.
about as helpful.
for some reason,
Well,
my favorite meme is the one with like the guy like grabbing onto a green arrow while he's like shooting to space in his underwear, and it's like tears going down his eyes, like as it's shooting up. I'm like, every time I see it, it makes me laugh because it's just such a great FOMO indicator thing. Like,
Can we get an example of that meme in the chat, please? Can
bro,
we show the chat?
I'm trying to think if I can find it. Yeah.
well, it's like one of the things that I've done, you know, sort of like, okay, let me back up one step. So back to the higher point, it's like, hey, if I just want someone screaming at me that a coin is going to go higher, I'm going to join the Telegram for that coin. Like, I don't need that in a general group. If I just need a bunch of, like, cultish, hey, we're all gonna make it because we bought this coin, there's already a group for that, probably. It's for that specific coin. Um, and then like one of the things I've done kind of as an application to get into some let's say higher quality telegram groups is like, okay, I've got some info, and I'm heavily autistic, so I do a little write up, and I'm like, all right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to get an early contract address. I'm going to share it with you. Here's this guy's track record. It's not great. you know Here's what this looks like. If you see this, go ahead and dump. That sort of thing. And we went in, the project went about as well as expected in that it didn't go great. um, and then a bunch of us like kind of did a post mortem on like, here's why we think it did poorly, here's where the money went. Oh, we found this contract thing that's interesting. If you've got a good contract guy, you should look at this. And so kind of doing that like post game analysis can often be really helpful too, because it's not just about, oh, I lost money, let's move on. It's, I lost money, what lesson can I learn, so at least I didn't throw my money away, I paid for a lesson.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
better.
pretty often in crypto that having paid for a lesson is the best second place prize you can hope for. I think that's a really interesting perspective. That's definitely, especially during NFT mania, I like to think that I paid for a couple of lessons, and maybe they were worth it.
Yeah.
But here the meme coin craze is still running, and so if you can do after action reports on that while things are still popping, those lessons are going to be a lot more valuable, right?
Yeah, and worst case scenario, you're paying for the same lesson 10 times. That gets real expensive.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
it
that it
means you
does.
learn it 10 times harder, though, right? Like,
I don't know if you didn't learn it the first 9 times, is the 10th really what clinches it, or are we just dumb?
I don't know. We keep buying. So.
I think so Harry, tell me about, so you got into one of those groups and you had to like sort of do an application for it to show that you weren't like a complete idiot. What was that
Well,
like?
it wasn't like a, fill out this form. It was like, I know these guys have a group and I know some of them. So hopefully if I'm impressive enough, I can get an invite.
Mm.
Um, but there wasn't like an actual like, fill out this form and maybe we'll think you're neat. But
Maybe
generally
we'll think
those
you need.
yeah, and generally those groups kind of operate on a, everybody has to contribute, no dead weight sort of a thing. So
Hmm.
But what do they
you know,
consider contributing? Like buying
yeah.
in?
Well, it's for some of the groups, it's be in the trenches, bring some alpha. Um, some people are like the contract analysts. So if you've got the contract, they're the ones who can read it and kind of tell you what it does. Um, there are people that are all over Twitter that can be like, okay, here's what I feel like the market sentiment is around this meme. So there's different roles. Um, but you don't want to have like a group of 10 people and 6 of them don't do anything except buy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Yeah, because if they're just coming in and they're like, well, I mean, it depends on the type of group you want. Like, I guess if you just had a whole bunch of people who just buy anything you shill at them, like, that's what, to your earlier point, the guy coming in saying everything's Mog, that's basically what he's looking at, right?
Yeah, and he and it's not like there's not room for a group to have, Mr. Moneybags who can kind of help like pump the floor or whatever, but if you've got 10 people and you're all kicking in 5 soul, um that doesn't necessarily move the needle on a lot of meme coins. And if the guy who analyzes the contracts is kicking in the same amount as the guy who does nothing, well, what are you here for aside from just being another person to shill to? I don't know that I need you in the group.
Yep. No, that's a great point. It's It's interesting because the whole point of a group like that is that people can you can delegate specific jobs to people, and hopefully they're the better ones for it, so you can get things faster. Because like when you're doing it on your own, like to the point earlier about my boomer coin adventure, where this guy could change it at any point. Like for me, if you like when I buy something, usually I'll buy a little bit and then I'll try selling it because I have had a few that's like, I do it and then afterwards there was some hidden function or there was some weird tax and it like takes 90% of the sell side. And I'm like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
glad I did this instead of just yeeting in, right?
Yeah.
But maybe I just stopped that. Maybe I just missed that first 100x because I took the 5 minutes to experiment first, right?
Yeah. Well, and like, hearing Nate talk about some of the early groups that he was in before NFTs were really a super big thing, kind of back in the Tron days of like, everybody had specialties, but they were also kind of PvP against each other, which is not necessarily what you want in a group.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
No,
but
but that happens so often in
yeah,
crypto world, right? So you've really got to kind of go out of your way to set up systems where you're not turning it into a little bit of a PvP run.
yeah. Well, and I mean, part of a group like that too is that even if you've got three people whose like full time thing is like monitor Twitter for stuff that looks neat, um,
Hmm.
three people can't be on all of Twitter all at once. And so part of having a group like that is that, in theory, you're spread out in slightly different niches and you get alpha in different places. So you can kind of cover more ground. But again, if you've got people who aren't participating in that, well, then what are they doing?
Right. The problem with a lot of this, like, I mean, yeah, when you start thinking about like when it turns into a PvP thing, then it becomes one of those like, okay, I'm gonna buy in before I tell, I just did the research, I found this cool piece of alpha. I'm gonna buy in before I bring it to my little alpha group because I want to make sure that when they all decide to dump, I'm already way ahead of them. Like you just turned it into a like I don't know, like you have actually set all them up to be your exit liquidity. So you've actually done the opposite of what the alpha group was intended for. But it's interesting, right? When you think about it, like it's not like you can bring it and be like, "We're all going to buy it. This is the exact same second, so we all have the same thing, and we're all going to sell it the same second." Like that's not how it works.
Yeah, well, and, like even if you set up a sniper or something, like you set up your sniper and there's still going to be like an order that stuff goes in. And so you can't, especially in an alpha group, you can't all win the same, but you can kind of do your best. But yeah, I mean, there's been stuff where it's like, oh, I found the contract address. I spent 10 seconds buying mine and then 15 seconds telling you guys, but now you're 30 seconds later than I was. And sometimes that makes a really big difference.
Mhm. Isn't that crazy? Like again, there's most of these meme coins. I mean, everybody's always, you always feel like you're too late, but I'm like, if something runs to 100 million and you bought in like under a million, like you're still doing pretty amazingly good.
Yeah.
Like if you found it at 100,000, you had the time to do a little bit of digging before it did a 10x. So it doesn't feel that way when your alpha group is yelling in your face that we're all about to run to the moon together. But
Yeah. It's, I mean, I've said before, it's like I'm in some mid quality telegrams and discords and a couple of pretty good ones, but sometimes it's about knowing the quality of your telegram group and how much, soul or ETH or whatever you should throw at any given thing.
yeah, no. And then there's, I mean, it's fun because we talk about meme coins, but man, there's so much. Yeah, I put some notes about the safe token stuff because I'm noticing that the liquidity pool is pretty stable, and but everybody and as people discover it, like everybody's selling, you can watch. So, because this is a token it was airdropped, what, a year ago? But when it was dropped to everybody who had safe, like Gnosis safes, and people who had done stuff for the Gnosis team in the past. So, a bunch of people got a bunch of tokens, but then it was the contract was paused, so nobody could transfer. And the intent was they were trying to set up a DAO and they were trying to get institutions to buy in and help develop, multi-sig technology stuff and create a whole voting DAO. So they wanted all this stuff in place before allowing transfer. Well, that's half of that stuff has been done. So the DAO voted last week to unpause the contract. So now everybody who received those tokens, you're now able to go sell. But if you look, you can tell not everybody knows that. So so when we talk, this is not a shit coin. This is actually a really important coin that supposedly enables a whole DAO infrastructure to be able to centralize the common multi-sig tech that everybody uses to secure their larger holdings, right? So it's not a shit coin, but I could see it very well acting like one very quickly as soon when people start discovering that they're able to move these tokens now. Whether that means it goes up or down is the question. It could just go straight to the floor, right, and go below the floor before you even know it. But
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, I remember when the ENS airdrop happened, and it's like, oh, it's now you've got voting rights, and everybody just said, yeah, cool, I've got money, I'm dumping.
right. I mean, depending on, we've been here for a while, and it's like for me, one of my favorite things to do is just play with stuff and look around and try weird things. Sometimes it costs me some money, so it sucks when I lose, $5 trying to push something. But man, it makes it so when I look back, yeah, when the ENS one dropped, I had probably 40 names that I had registered years before the drop. So I forgot just how much I got, but it was a lot. It was like 5 or 6 grand worth of ENS got dropped on me for all
Yeah.
playing around, just goofing around for years and just, registering stupid names that I was never going to actually use and let them lapse.
Yeah, the ENS drop was really interesting. I liked that a lot. I benefited from it a little bit. That was perhaps the first airdrop that I really made a number where I really got airdropped some amount of money that made me go, "Oh, wow, that's kind of neat." It's only like $1,000 or something. It wasn't a whole lot, but
Yeah, four figures, four
um
figures.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right.
It's
But
better
it
than
was
two.
really yeah, definitely. And that's a little more of the common, right? But
Yeah.
it was interesting. I mean, they had a really I liked that airdrop a lot. The claim system was okay. I liked how they had it set up. It seemed like it was quite fair. I forget all the mechanics that they did to combat, the sort of spamming, the name spamming that people did.
Mhm.
And so I thought it ended up being pretty fair. That was my recollection of it. I don't remember all the mechanics. And then the DAO and everything that they had set up at the end of it was quite well formed. And I was really hyped. I actually kept all of my tokens, and I was excited to participate in DAO stuff. I wasn't as much of a participant as I had hoped, but it was really interesting. It felt like that was perhaps the only airdrop I've ever gotten where I went, "Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't sell this. I'm believing in this." Maybe that was a little silly looking back because ENS hasn't had quite the run that I would have expected to have. But hey, whatever.
You see, I did the same thing. I actually kept I sold half and I kept the other half for quite a
Hmm.
while, and then the price started going up because I thought the same thing. I was going to participate in the DAO, but after I tried doing it, the DAO wasn't really doing anything that interested me. So I
Yeah,
was I did give it a shot, which ended up being smart because the drop ended up going way up in the interim, and then
yeah.
I sold, and then it started. I think everybody had the same. Those who were interested discovered the same thing right around the same time that nothing was happening, so everybody started selling.
Well, it's tough because it was good mechanics, but
Yeah,
then exactly right. What was being covered just ended up not being that pressing or exciting. I think we all got hit with the realities of entity slash corporate governance. It was oh wow, this is so cool. We can all have a vote, and then you see what's getting voted on. And you're like, oh, okay,
right.
Maybe I don't want to vote.
yeah,
That's a common thing that DAOs are doing. I've noticed. I've always been, I'm in it for the tech, blah blah blah. It's and I like that stuff,
Yeah.
but so I love the DAO concepts, but in practice, especially when you get larger DAOs and you start having teams that you need to hire people behind it to manage it. You start. I've started discovering that a lot of them fall into that. Um, what is it like? You make a little money and then you get scared you're going to lose it, so you stop taking risks. So a lot of them started doing that, where it's like, okay, we've got X amount of runway, so now we're safe. And I'm like, well, not if you don't do anything. It's like, well, we can pay salaries for the next 5 years. I'm like, okay, but what are you going to do for 5 years? Like that, maybe you should have it so you only have 1 year of runway, but in that year you like push all kinds of stuff that make bring more revenue in, right? Now you're gonna last 30 years because you've successfully done something bigger,
Yeah. If you're not doing anything with your runway, where is it taking you?
right?
Yeah. It does
So
kind
you,
of bring up a lot of like the financial nihilism I think we're seeing in shitcoins recently, or lately though, right? That for example, this ENS project, right, was I think pretty successful, really interesting, really well done. And then I think several of us are on the call, and are kind of speaking for a lot of crypto Twitter that we got to read the accounts of at the time. Went, yeah, this is cool, but I actually am not that interested in participating. And it makes me think of like the financial nihilism that is inherent in like the shitcoin scene right now, where everybody's really leaning into, yeah, it doesn't do a damn thing. Isn't that fun? Because it turns out we didn't like corporate governance, but we still want to make money. And it turns out that was the most fun part of the ENS drop. And when you kind of boil that experience down, here we are.
Yeah, I want to say this was around like January, February last year, um, where I'd made my art gobblers play, and I took some profits out, and I had a handful of ETH to kind of play around with. Um, and we're sitting in the SPT Discord, and we're making like stupid plays, and it's like, this is for like point oh 0.01. I bought 5 of them, and then like someone would be like, I don't know if I like the art. And then like 5 minutes later it'd be like, they're point oh 0.05 now. I like the art 5x more than I did 20 minutes ago. It's just like, because I, I do think there is something to liking an art style, but at the end of the day, most people here are here for money at some level. Um, and there are certainly things like, oh well, this is my forever PFP. I might trade something else. Um, they want to be part of communities more than they want to sell their thing because that has value for them. But it's like most people in crypto and NFTs are not here for just funsies. They want to get some kind of value out of it, whether that value be actual like money or experiences or club membership or access to a community or whatever. But at the same time, like talking about utility, people didn't care about the DAO; they wanted money. So if you're pushing something as utility, you have to make sure that the utility they get is more valuable than them just selling the thing.
right, which is more than just like a hoodie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard because in a world of like 10,000 X's, right, where every once in a while, I want to underline every once in a while, one of these shitcoins, like, or just any coin or project, whatever, but specifically shitcoins, runs to, you make it, runs to the moon, and you do have that opportunity for the 10,000x. And we're sitting here and we're talking about, right? Because I think, Harry, Sloth, your point is like really well taken, right? Like, how do you create utility that outweighs the person's want to just go, yeah, I'll sell it. And in a world of 10,000 X's that happen every once in a while, it's really hard to imagine how you reach that level of utility, right?
Yeah, and if you look at like Bored Apes and some of those guys, the utility for the most part was social capital. It wasn't like fiat or the ability to sell. It was the social capital, and a lot of that social capital was based on this perception that these guys were geniuses for buying apes early and holding on to them forever, and now they're worth so much, and that makes them smart, and we should value their opinion and listen to them, despite the fact that none of those things were true. Uh, but
Obligatory laugh. That was really funny.
um, but like there was this social status that came with it, and that's still true of a lot of different NFT projects. If you look at something like natives, um, there is some degree of social capital that comes with being on the list, but for a lot of people, they had to have enough social capital to be on the list in the first place. For some of that, for some of us, it was being in the right place at the right time. For other people, it was having 1.5 million followers and being invested in crypto. For some people, it was being part of the right the right community and getting lucky and winning a whitelist spot. Um, so there's kind of lots of different ways that social capital got generated. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens when the project comes out. I'm of the opinion that I'm on the list, but I'm of the opinion that the list being kind of hand curated by somebody who has respect in the space could potentially be reused by other projects, or at the very least be a project where if you're a holder, that gives you access to some sort of raffle to get you whitelist for other projects or something. But the social capital, as much as it's kind of hard to like pin an actual value on, you can see cases where it's like, okay, a board ape is worth $500,000. If you only own one, your options are to have $500,000 or hold the ape. And a lot of people decided that the social capital of holding an ape was worth more than $500,000.
Until it wasn't, and then you started
Yeah.
seeing floor prices start dropping. That's
Uh-huh. Yeah, and
yeah.
it's kind of interesting to it's like, okay, for those people who had an ape at $500,000 in 2022, did it stay worth it now that you can only sell it for like 30 grand or 60 grand or whatever it is? Like,
I
do you
mean,
agree with your decision?
it's like I had a couple bored apes, and I sold them like, well, relatively early. I got like 20 ETH for them, so I can't. It's not
Mhm.
like I didn't make my money. Like I minted those, so like that was a serious up. But
Yeah.
by the time I sold them, I had already had gotten to the point where I was able to claim a dog. So each of those dogs I also sold for another 10 ETH, like a couple months later.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people who held even longer and got a mutant, I'm like, well, you also got another thing that you probably could have sold for 20 or 25 ETH a couple months later after that. So I'm like, even if they're only worth 10 ETH now, I'm like, everybody who got it early on, like, still is way. It doesn't feel that way because you have an asset that just went up to 500,000 and now is back down. Like, it doesn't feel that way, but you did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've kind of seen that like defense on crypto Twitter, just people being like, well, you're laughing at me and holding it to 500,000 and then back down to 10 ETH. But I got mutants, I got dogs, I got ape coin. So yeah, maybe my actual board ape isn't worth very much, but I still made 500,000 along the way. And it's like, yeah, that's all true and fair. You could have
Unless
had
you
an extra
held it.
500,000.
Also, unless you also held those on the way down too, and now those
Yeah.
aren't going for anything. So now you can be like, yeah, actually, you did carry everything, and then you held right through. So, yeah,
Yeah.
not this is when you've lost, but yeah, you had a lot of other chances to make your money if you had wanted.
Yeah. Well, and they gamed it so for ApeCoin, if you had held all your assets and not sold any of them off, you would have received a bigger ApeCoin drop. And so they kind of created a community around, hey, if you hold, there will be rewards. But bored apes, they're not, strictly a Ponzi from the idea of kind of getting paid out with the next people's money. But it was sort of this Ponzi where the way holding a board ape made you money was you could hold it, and then Yuga would release some new asset, and then you could make money on that. And so as long as you held your ape, you'd get more money. But that's only true until it's not anymore. And we're definitely at that point now. And especially as Yuga becomes more of like a formalized business, you can only do that so many times before the value of everything crashes.
That's a
And
great
I think
point.
we've certainly reached that point. And that's part of the reason that ape prices are so low. Also, their absolute inability to follow through on basically any of their promises long term, like Other Side or the game. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, the thing that made this whole space big was, ludicrous promises that you don't really have the technical ability to deliver on. Like,
Uh-huh.
there's more than just you guys done that. So, but yeah,
Yeah. Well, promises are routinely worth more than deliveries
Yeah.
because you
This,
know exactly what a delivery is because you have it. You don't know what the value of a promise is because it could be amazing or it could be shit. And especially in the WAGMI years, people were high on their own supply and valued promises way higher than their actual final value would be.
oh yeah. You know what? Some of the stuff that I really find interesting is when you see like catalyst or something that's like galvanizing a certain meta in the industry. Like you'll see side things. Like one thing that I thought was really cool when that ape coin drop came, and yeah, if you had like a dog paired with an ape, then you got like a bonus.
Yeah.
One guy, because we worked with him, I think it was Owl of Moistness. He wrote this fun. It was a thing where you could it was a custodial contract where you could what you would stake your dog. Somebody else would stake their ape to it, and then it would pay you. It would claim the ape coin as like a pair, and then it would split the ape coin between you both. So for those apes who had
Whoa, now
sold their
that's
dog,
creative.
yeah, like because I had a couple dogs at the time, but I had sold my apes, so I found a couple people in the ape community who didn't have dogs anymore. I'm like, hey, you want to work together? So
Dude,
I,
how
Yeah.
interesting.
I think I saw 4 or 5 of those contracts kind of floating around. Nate wrote one of them too, where I think he bought an ape because he figured out like the number system for the other side deeds and some other stuff. And that was kind of beforehand, but like so he had apes because of that, and then he didn't have the other stuff, so he kind of paired with people that only had mutants or dogs, and split things up that way. So it was a great idea. A few people had it,
yeah,
um, and that's the sort of thing where if you have social capital, you can get away with a little bit more because it's like some of these people, like Nate has a big enough social presence that if he'd have stolen that guy's mutant, like he would have got shit all over the place for it.
that's exactly
Um,
right. Like that's the scare. Like when you see stuff like that, yeah, you like for me, like I knew the developer and I looked at it and like I could see it and I talked to him and he's worked in other projects. So I was like, yeah, he's gonna lose a lot more money long term by stealing somebody's, mutant dog than he stands to gain from his like extra ape coin he just got, right? Like
right, but if it's some anonymous guy with like 1,200 followers that could all be bought, and he's like, "Hey, I wrote this contract to kind of custodian our two things," and he puts a dog in, and you put your ape in, and then he takes the dog and ape out, and then deletes his Twitter. What are you gonna do?
well, that's the thing that's kind of interesting when people like you see them go on like screaming about lose their apes, and then when you track it down, if it when it ends up being something like that, like I see a transaction here where you sent this to this guy. He's like, well, yeah, I was trying to stake it to the contract. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so he didn't, he did steal it, but you also like opened the door and sent it to him. Like, you put it in a box and stamped it and sent it to his house.
Yeah,
Right.
you put 50 grand in a shoebox and he drove up with an SUV, but you're the one that put it in the back. Like,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really, I don't know the ins and outs of like theft on that one, or what kind of private rights of action you would have in the US. But when it comes to crypto, all things, enforcement is kind of the critical problem at the
yeah.
moment, anyways, especially for private rights of action. But I really love the idea of that contract. I think it's super interesting. It's cool because the point of these blockchain assets, right, is that you're supposed to like self custody your stuff. Like what's yours is yours. Nobody can take it away from you, unless let that happen.
Mhm.
Which is kind of interesting, and so I love the idea of like pooling those resources to like farm these airdrops, and then have that be mediated by a smart contract rather than somebody that you've got to trust, essentially, to handle that transaction, to handle that airdrop farming. It feels very like it's within the spirit of the space. But I appreciated the sort of discussion and the point of view that you both brought. That like yeah, it's supposed to be trustless, and like yeah, these smart contracts are really cool and really helpful. However, actually having the skill set to assess that contract and to assess the social capital, essentially that the person who created it, who's probably smarter than a lot of the participants in the smart, a lot of the people that would interact with the smart contract and thus could hide something nefarious in there. Especially assessing that social capital and assessing the contract itself is like kind of a unique skill set. So it seems like, wow, this is amazing. This is trustless. This is at the heart of blockchain technology in this space, and yet the skill set required to safely interact with it still is kind of a high barrier.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to something like Akatar Dreams or whatever it was called, and they set up this trustless contract that was going to refund everybody their money, and they didn't do anything malevolent, but they still fucked it up, and there's a bunch of irretrievable ETH, and so even without bad actors, there are issues with trustless contracts because in order to make it trustless, you have to trust the code. And if somebody screws it up, then there can be really big problems.
Yeah, I also think that's a really interesting perspective, of like sometimes it's nefarious and sometimes it's just messing it up. But when you're bringing a lot of social capital to it, when you have a big audience, when you've hyped up a project, again, for example, that the Akatar Dreams is a really good example. You've got a lot of people participating and a lot of people that are hyped, and you make this like, very normal mistake, I suppose. Not nefarious at all, especially because they didn't benefit from it. But
Right.
right, this not nefarious mistake, and yet caused huge amounts of damage. It kind of, on the shitcoin topics, it kind of reminds me of like the Slurf stuff, where the guy with the with the sloth profile picture was like, "Oh no, I accidentally messed this up." I think that there was some commentary from on crypto Twitter about whether or not that was intentional or sort of an organized publicity stunt. I don't really have an opinion on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to tell because there's some gray area between what is obviously a nefarious thing and what is obviously a mistake. Because there are mistakes that you could make that are exploitable or could benefit you, or it's like, oh, I accidentally deployed the contract when I didn't mean to and a bunch of people bought it. um and I or oh, I meant to just give myself 2% but I accidentally gave myself 20% of the coins, and then also I sold them. Um, so it's tough to tell with some of that stuff. Um, well, now that we're reaching the last little bit of the hour, I should shill my bags, as one does. Um,
Yeah, exactly. And also, we'll have to find some time for a message from our sponsor.
that's right. Um, so there is now a Keck W coin that seems to be doing pretty well. It got over a million, kind of in the wee hours. It's back down at about 725K right now. Um, the guy who's shilling it is pretty decently well known in the space. Um, so it's got some potential. It's not going to be like a hey, this is a 100x, but I could see it doing a 10 pretty easy. Please buy my bags. I'm only up 2.5x. That is unacceptable.
LOL. And so, what was this again?
It's Keck W. I will drop a photon link in the live chat. Yay! I didn't get kicked from the Discord.
There you go.
Nice.
So Keck W, pretty common meme in general in the space. Pretty easy to shill it. Feels like it's got at least a little bit of legs. I don't think it's gonna rug 90% on you. You might not make a lot of money, but you probably won't lose a ton either.
You know what? That's a good way to look at it. Like some of these meme coins, it's funny where they jump and go back like If you bought it early enough, even when it drops, like you can still sometimes sell for break even and still get that gambler's high.
Yeah, I mean, the coin's been out a good while. I want to say, yeah, it looks like it came out on the 24th, so it's been out almost a week. Um, it's been hanging around for a little bit. Feels like now might be a pretty decent dip to buy. I bought at around 350k. So we'll see what happens. Don't gamble more than you can afford to lose, but do buy my bags so that you can be my exit liquidity.
That's pretty
Uh,
amazing.
Mr. Shiba Inu, do you wanna do the message from our sponsor this week? I feel like I'm usually shilling it, but you've got some in-depth knowledge of it, I think.
Yeah, sure. This show is brought to you by the Anonymals. Uh, this is the first Ethereum-based anonymous animal PFP ever made, ever. There's never been another animal anonymous PFP. So, if you want an anonymous animal PFP, you need to buy an anonimal. And I'm working on. I've posted a link up to a mint page that we're working on, but we should have that live soon so we can start pushing people to it, so they can all be anonymous animals with us.
Yeah, do the thing.
Yes, do this thing.
Hit the buttons. Buy my other bags.
Yeah, those will be our other bags that I like.
And
No, I
and we
just
covered the historicity of these Anonymals, right? That they're the first animal PFP ever, I think.
Yeah.
yeah
Yep.
Yeah, good.
yeah.
Good,
Each
good,
of
good.
them have a unique backstory on how they got their names. If you read the descriptions.
Yeah. It's also important to note that they are off chain, on chain, in chain, on chain with a dash, and on chain without a dash.
Yes.
And probably the first to do that too, which I think is
Yeah.
really impressive.
Yeah.
Because
Really.
also, I feel like we need to update some of the descriptions to include that there was AI was also used as part of their creation thing. So they are also part of the AI meta as well.
Yep. And I, being someone who has no control over the project, am hereby promising that there is the possibility of an airdrop at an unspecified future date.
Very possibly.
Very interesting. What exciting news? I guess I don't know. What
I,
exciting news from our community member who again has no connection to
I,
this.
I have no control over whether or not that happens, but I hear people are saying it. All of them are me, but it might be more later.
And now I've also heard somebody say it as well. So it's
That's
obviously
right.
gospel now.
You've heard the news.
It's something like that, I guess. I don't know about news being the word for it, but it is something somebody said somewhere, I guess.
I'm using a very special definition of news, which is anything that I say.
Oh, perfect.
Feels appropriate.
Some of these. This is actually a good shill. So we're talking about shit coins, but that's not just ERC20s or Sol coins and stuff. That's also NFTs. There's plenty of those. I don't know if I'd call them shit coins, but Base Apes dropped like a week or two ago. I came across him because Wizard X likes to post random crap that he buys. And so and every time he does, like inevitably when I look, like he's bought like 400 of them already. He's like, hey, just in case, I think this is an amazing project. And then you go and look and he's like bought up half the total. But this is one that I actually like. He lynched it and he was like, this is a cool art. So I went and looked and they were pretty cool. And they were like, I don't know. I think they were like 501 ETH to mint ones. They were like, literally probably 50 cents to $1 on base. So I think I paid like $40 and I bought like 40 of them. And now the floor is up to like, well, actually, there's offers on all these that are 0.001, which is $4 a piece. So
Hey, that's
I
like
could
an
probably,
8x.
yeah, like amazingly, this based NFT project, I think I could sell them all and actually, yeah, make it 2 or 3x. How's that for interesting?
2 or 3x, brother. You're in crypto world. No. We got to hold out for that 100,000x,
I know
please.
it's not quite there yet. I'm waiting for these to I'm sitting on mine. So
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you over there working at JP Morgan? No.
Yeah, regular people out here, 5% interest rate. That's amazing. They're like, only a 5x in 2 days.
yeah.
That's garbage.
I'm just
Uh,
saying, like, this is good because this tells me like there might be, everybody's saying NFTs are dead, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I see a little bit of like activity, right? So they're definitely like, I don't know, on life support, but they're holding on. They might make a miraculous recovery sooner than we thought. Who knows?
yeah.
I can't let myself comment on NFTs. I'm too deep in it, and this is shitcoin. This is the shitcoin talk. I can't let myself do it.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're talking about ERC20s. Guess what else is an ERC20? CryptoPunks, baby.
Yeah,
Is it a shitcoin or not?
I don't know.
No, they're awesome.
They're a pretty expensive shitcoin, if so. But
That's
either
right.
way.
But you know what? I remember there was one that I bought and lost my ass on recently called like Cabbage. And that one I think was really funny because there was only like one token. And and so kind of like, you'd be like, "Oh, I like imagine paying like, $60,000 per coin, right?" I don't I forget what CryptoPunks are at now. I'm just throwing out a number. Don't actually traumatize me with the real number. Because I don't own one. Don't hurt my feelings like that. And so the cabbage coin came out, and it was like there was only like one coin. And so the one coin was worth like the whole market cap for the coin. So it was
Mhm.
kind of funny that you would be buying like 0.0002 cabbage, and if you wanted one whole cabbage, you'd have to buy up the whole thing, and it was just kind of funny.
Yeah, there have been a few like that. Nate has kind of had his idea for like one coin, and then you on the Twitter account, you're just like, one coin has flipped Bitcoin, you know, because it's like you get the market cap up to 100K, and all of a sudden one coin is worth 100K. So one coin has flipped Bitcoin.
I mean, there's nothing saying we can't do that. I know
Yep.
it's maybe that'll be next week. Yeah, we need to come up with like future ideas. Like one of these weeks, we should have a launch party. One of these weeks.
Live launch a shitcoin.
Yep.
That could be kind of fun. I also think that maybe one of the homework takeaways from this is Harry, I really liked your discussion on like Telegram groups and like people having different roles and sort of keeping people accountable to stay in the group. And so a lot of this week and last week I've been working on like operating agreements for like crypto companies and LLCs and stuff. And so having talks with people about like, all right, so what are people's roles? How do we enforce that? What is everybody agreeing to? What do these discussions look like where people agree on roles? Some combination of those two things, the discussions that I had this week and last week, and then what you brought up just a few minutes ago, is like really making my mind race about like, man, what kind of mechanisms and like more serious discussions could you have, with a group of people that wanted to devote their time seriously to shitcoin trading, like you've described before, right? Of like, dedicating yourself like to scouring Twitter, or like somebody being like, yeah, I'm a money man and I'm with this group.
Wow.
I think that's really interesting.
Devoting yourself to the craft. That would be
Yeah, and like, I don't know, like it might be kind of fun for us to, perhaps the four of us, five if Walshy, who I forget what his animal is, but if we like sat down and I don't know, thought more seriously about what a group like that would look like and what our roles within it would be, I think that could be a really interesting sort of offline exercise.
Yeah. I mean, if it makes me money, I'll do whatever. I don't give a shit.
Classic.
so there. What if it doesn't make you money?
I'll
'Cause if-
probably still do it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen your wallet history, Buster. That's funny.
You've seen my frenetic work ethic of I'm gonna work real hard on this and then forget it exists.
Oh, that's funny, but also a classic in this space.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's cool. I guess we're at the top of the hour. Not that these like only need to last an hour, but I might go see if there's something productive I can do. Start, get back to reading my contracts. Maybe next week, after I have some more time to research it, we can maybe even throw in a discussion on that whole money transmitter stuff that came up this week in the legal world, and it'll probably be old news by then. But CZ just getting sentenced to the 4 months in prison, and just all sorts of interesting legal updates this month.
Yeah. There's always something.
Yeah, maybe not quite related to shitcoins, except that Binance lists a lot of them.
And, if we're talking about money transference rules and CZ going to jail, not too far separated from shitcoinery.
Yeah, going to jail generally not that separated from shitcoinery.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right, folks. Well, I'm gonna hop off. Again, it was a really good discussion. I'll see y'all next week. It was really fun, and also one last congrats to everybody for what are we at? Like 3 weeks of like pretty consistent, minus my fuck ups personally.
Yeah.
So like I'm like pretty impressed in like crypto world. That's like 9/10 of the battle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, we're basically grizzled veterans who've been at this for decades. Like, right?
Yeah, OG status at this point.
We've even got 3 whole people listening to us.
Yeah, my girlfriend was actually watching the on the YouTube stream, so that's at least
Oh.
4.
Oh, right there. Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
We gotta track them numbers.
Yeah, we do. Got to get those metrics.
We'll
Got to
start
get those
posting up
metrics.
analytics sheets soon. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You see,
All
at
right,
some point,
folks.
we'll move the markets ourselves just by bringing it up, and then
Yeah.
people pay us to mention it here. Perfect.
Yes.
Oh, we could only dream.
I will absolutely accept paid promotion money.
Yep.
I
Call
just
up Sloth.
I
He's
just
the
want to
money
get
man.
I just want to get that on the record right now. You can 100% pay me to mention your shitcoin in this discussion.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah. As long as I disclose the ad status, I'm good to go. So, I know the rules. I know what do.
Oh,
There you go. There you go. All right, well, folks, fun week. I'll let y'all enjoy it. I'm gonna go try and get some other work done. But adios. All right.
All right.
adios.
Later, guys.
Yes.
Later.